Hello, I'm Bernard Keavy. Now, we are in the information age, which means that we all need to be lifelong learners, if we want to, maximise our careers and maximise our earnings. And a lot of people have had sort of bad experiences with learning, and also many people don't realise what it takes to actually learn. And the more you know from previous learning, the easier it becomes to learn new things. But you only learn stuff from previous learnings if you know how to memorize it and recall it from your long-term memory, which means that there's a formula that I'm going to explain to you. And I've taken this from Tony Buzan's book, Use Your Head, but it's also covered by Colin Rose and I can't remember the guy's first name, but Nickel, in a book called Accelerated Learning. So the way it works is if we learn anything and just, learn it, but don't do anything afterwards, what happens is when we just finish learning, our learning peaks as we assimilate the information. So we're up here about sort of 80% of it is in our heads, but it's in our short-term memories. And what happens is very, very quickly, so within a day, we forget most of it. And within 2 days, the vast majority of it, and within a week, we've probably forgotten all of it. And the only way to avoid that happening is to be aware of this formula. And the formula here says to turn short-term memory into long-term memory. This is straight out of Tony Buzan's book. STM stands for short-term memory. So to turn short-term memory into long-term memory, you need 5 R's, 5 repetitions. And the way it works is you have to review the learning, first of all, 10 minutes after you've finished. Now, what you do after 10 minutes is you mind map what you think you've learned, and then you compare that with your notes, and then you see what you've missed, and then you amend the mind map. And you take about 5 to 10 minutes to do this one. So this is sort of a reasonably thorough review. And then what you do is a day later, so the next day, you review it again. But this time it should only take you maybe 2 to 3 to 4 minutes. And it's the same idea. You mind map what you think you've remembered, and then you compare it with what you should have remembered on yesterday's review. And you fill in the gaps. And you do the same thing a week later, a month later, and then 3 to 6 months later. And by the time you've reviewed the learning in that way 5 times, it'll be in your long-term memory and you won't forget it. Now, I remember reading once that someone says the best way to learn something is to understand it. But that's only true to an extent, because if you learn something here and you understand it, but you don't do these reviews, you still won't remember it. So you do need to both understand what you're learning rather than learn it by rote. You need to understand it, but then you need to do these reviews. So to repeat, you need to review after 10 minutes after finishing your learning, and then a day later, a week later, a month later, and then 3 to 6 months later. And if you do that, it's deeply embedded in your long-term memory. And the beauty of that is that not only do you remember it, however, you also, when you come to learn something else that's sort of related to it, the brain has got this in the long-term memory, and it can link on the new learning to what you already know. And as I said, the more you know, the more you can link on to what you know, and therefore the more effectively you learn new stuff. And it's a cumulative thing. So if you never do this thing in the first place, you never have enough in here for the new learning to latch onto, and it becomes harder and harder to do it. So to summarize, we're in the information age. We all need to be lifetime learners. The best way to learn is to study something. Now, that's a whole topic in itself, by the way, because there's 8 different types of intelligence. There's 3 major different learning styles. So you need to be aware of all of that. However, you learn stuff, and then and this could be anything. This could be corporate training. This doesn't have to be sort of, college, school, university. It doesn't have to be any of that. It can be anything, learning how to sell, anything, learning on the job, learning a language. It's all the same. You learn it using your preferred learning style and being aware of your different intelligences, and then you review it 5 times, 10 minutes afterwards, a day afterwards, a week afterwards, a month afterwards, and 6 months afterwards. And that's how you become a lifelong learner. And if you become a lifelong learner, you'll have a more satisfying life, and you'll also earn more and do better in your career. Hope you found that interesting. If you want to pursue this further, get in touch, bernardkeavy.com. There's various things on that site, videos, etc. But if you want to have just a conversation, just make a comment on LinkedIn or Facebook and I'll get back to you. Hope you found that interesting. Thank you very much for watching.